You know, when you think of Bruce Lee, you instantly picture the action, right? The uh the lightning moves, that incredible presence on
It's
screen.
totally iconic,
Ah.
unforgettable.
But if you peel back that layer, there's so much more there. He wasn't just the martial artist, just the movie
Oh,
star.
absolutely not. He was a deep thinker, a philosopher, really.
And what's wild is how relevant his ideas still feel today. I mean, he passed away back in 1973.
It's quite striking, isn't it? And, what's really fascinating for this deep dive is we have um, this incredibly personal window into his thoughts during his final months.
Right, not interviews or movie lines, but something else.
Exactly. We're talking about a series of letters he wrote, very reflective, in Hong Kong. He actually called the collection In My Own
In
Process.
my own process. Wow, so it's like listening in on his private thoughts.
Pretty much. It gives us this unique access to his personal philosophy right at this incredibly pivotal moment in his life and career.
Okay, so set the scene for us. Hong Kong, early 1973. What's happening?
Right. Well, imagine the buzz. He's right on the cusp of global superstardom. Enter the Dragon, his big Hollywood break, is in the works. That's the one that would make him a household name everywhere.
Huge pressure there, I bet.
Immense. But at the exact same time, he's pouring his heart into his own passion project, Game of Death.
Ah, the one with the yellow jumpsuit. That was deeply connected to his own martial arts philosophy, wasn't it?
Very much so. So you've got
Hmm.
this collision, the external demands of a massive Hollywood production, the studio expectations,
Hmm.
and then his internal drive, his need to explore his art, his philosophy, his whole way of life. I mean, apparently there were even clashes with Warner Brothers.
Oh, really? About what?
Well, they wanted more straightforward action, maybe less of the philosophical stuff that Lee felt was absolutely essential.
Okay, so he's juggling Hollywood demands and his own artistic vision.
Exactly. And right in the middle of all that chaos, he's writing these deeply personal letters in my own process. Probably just for himself, really.
So these letters, they weren't like a manuscript for a book.
Doesn't seem like it. More like a journal, but, incredibly articulate.
Hmm.
Thinking out loud on paper.
And I heard there are several drafts.
Yeah, 8 letters in the series. And the 7th one is often seen as maybe the most polished. It really captures some core ideas.
Is there anything specific from that draft that stands out?
There's this passage that really makes you stop and think. He writes something like, "Surely we all admit that we are intelligent beings, though in reality we are being crammed with ready-made facts handed down to us ever since childhood.
Okay.
We accept most of these facts unexamined. We simply do not see in the true sense of the word." And then he adds, "When it comes to observing faults in others, most of us are quick to react with condemnation."
Wow. That's pretty pointed. He's talking about just passively accepting information.
Yeah, exactly. Operating on autopilot. We can think, he's saying, but so often we just absorb. From when we're kids, through school, all of it, without really questioning.
And then the second part about judging others.
Right. That quickness to condemn. It's a sharp contrast he's drawing. How we take in information versus how we react to perceived flaws in other people.
It really makes you think about today, doesn't it? With social media, the internet, information overload and instant judgment everywhere.
It's incredibly prescient. Like he saw it coming, this flood of information and the knee-jerk reactions online.
Yeah. Decades before it happened.
But his point isn't just to criticize, it's more a call for self-examination. Look inward. Question why you believe things.
It reminds me a bit of that line from Walt Whitman about re-examining everything you've been told.
That's a great connection. And Lee applies it so broadly, not just martial arts techniques, but everything. Life. Don't just accept. Dig deeper. Be curious.
Which kind of leads perfectly into one of his most famous ideas, doesn't it? The whole water thing.
Ah, yes, the water metaphor. Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless like water.
Water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. Everyone knows that line.
Right. But it wasn't just a cool quote for a movie. It was, fundamental to his whole philosophy, to Jeet Kune Do.
What's the deeper meaning there, then?
It's all about adaptability, resilience, not being rigid, being able to flow around obstacles, not just smash into them, finding the path of least resistance, but still being powerful.
Like water finding its way downhill.
Exactly. It can be gentle or it can have immense force.
Didn't that idea come from a specific moment? I think I remember a story.
Yeah, the story goes he was sparring with his Wing Chun teacher, Yip Man, and he was getting really frustrated, just couldn't get it right. Yip Man kept telling him to relax, be more fluid.
So what happened?
Well, Lee apparently went out on a boat, feeling stuck. And he, like, punched the water out of frustration. And he had this realization. The water just yielded.
Mm.
It absorbed the blow. It didn't fight back rigidly. That was his light bulb moment. The power in yielding, in adapting.
Be water.
Be water. And, he didn't just preach it. He really lived it. Think about that devastating back injury he had around 1970. The doctors basically told him his martial arts career was over. He might never kick properly again.
I remember hearing about that. Terrible.
But he refused to accept that limitation. He adapted. He rehabbed intensely, changed his training, found new ways, and then he went on to create some of the most incredible action sequences ever filmed.
He literally flowed around the obstacle.
Precisely. He embodied that philosophy.
And it seems like he saw himself as more than just a fighter or an actor, too, this idea of being an artist of life.
Yes, that's a key concept. He wasn't just mastering a physical discipline. He was trying to master the art of living fully authentically.
How did that show up in his writings?
Well, he wrote about this word quality, how much it meant to him, even as a kid. He said something like he wanted to be Mr. Quality himself, putting in the dedication, the sacrifice, so that people would recognize it. They'd say,
What was the phrase?
"Hey, now that's quality. Here's someone real."
Someone real. That feels important. Authenticity.
Absolutely. Striving for substance, not just surface, especially, you imagine, as he was getting more and more famous. The pressure to become just an image must have been intense. He wanted to be genuine.
Which feels very relevant for us, too, right? Trying to be authentic in our own lives.
Definitely. And in a world that often pushes conformity or curated images, that call to be real is powerful.
And we need to remember the context again. All this thinking, all this writing, it's happening amidst incredible pressure in 73.
Right. The push-pull with the studio on Enter the Dragon, the massive undertaking of Game of Death, his growing fame, which brought its own challenges.
And his health wasn't perfect either, was it? Didn't he have a collapse?
Yeah, in May 1973, just a couple of months before his death, he had a serious collapse, diagnosed with cerebral edema then, so add health worries to the mix.
So these letters, in my own process, they feel almost like a lifeline, a way to process everything.
I think it's a good way to put it. A space for reflection, for sense-making, for coping with all that internal and external turmoil.
And just to clarify for everyone listening, there wasn't like one single last sentence he wrote, right? It was more this ongoing process.
Exactly. The title itself says it. In my own process. It was evolving. That seventh draft we mentioned is significant because it seems quite developed, but it's part of a larger flow of thought.
Where can people learn more about these letters?
Well, the Bruce Lee Foundation archives are a key resource. And there was a book by Genesis Publications in 2023 that presented these writings in detail. Really valuable stuff.
You know what also strikes me is that amidst all this deep philosophy, there's apparently humor in his writings, too.
Oh, yeah. He wasn't just this intense, brooding figure all the time. He had a sharp wit, a playful side, a keen eye for human absurdity. And that comes through.
That makes him feel more accessible somehow.
It does. It's not philosophy from on high. It's grounded, human.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of why it's resonated so widely.
And the impact has been huge, right? Beyond just martial arts fans.
Definitely. His writings, collected in books like Striking Thoughts, have influenced athletes like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, skaters like Tony Hawk, business leaders, people from all walks of life.
And his daughter, Shannon Lee, keeps his legacy alive through the foundation.
Yes, she does incredible work promoting his philosophy, making sure these ideas continue to inspire people.
Looking at the philosophy itself, it feels like such a unique blend.
It really is. You see clear echoes of Taoism. That water metaphor is pure Taoist thinking.
Right.
Then there's Zen Buddhism, the idea of emptying the mind, being present,
Mm-hmm.
but also Western ideas, self-reliance, maybe even a bit of Nietzsche's will to power, that drive to overcome and become. And of course, it all ties back into his own creation, G-Unit, efficiency, directness, adaptability.
That fusion makes it feel universal, maybe.
I think so. It transcends specific cultures or disciplines. The core message is question things, adapt, be authentic. They speak to fundamental human experiences.
Yeah. And it adds another layer, doesn't it? Knowing he was writing all this, refining these ideas right before his sudden death.
It's incredibly poignant. He develops this profound perspective, pens these insightful reflections, and then he's gone. Just before Enter the Dragon explodes and cements his global legacy, he never saw the full impact.
So bringing it back to you listening now, what's the big takeaway from this deep dive into Bruce Lee's final writings from 1973?
For me, it's that these aren't just historical curiosities. They're like potent tools for navigating our lives right now.
How so?
Well, that challenge to question assumptions, more relevant than ever. That need for adaptability, for flowing like water when things get tough, absolutely crucial today. And the call to be authentic, to be real, that's a timeless pursuit.
So these ideas from 50 years ago can actually help us today.
I truly believe so. They offer practical wisdom.
Is there like one simple thing someone could try inspired by this?
Maybe try that empty cup idea he talked about. Consciously, maybe just once a day. Pick one assumption you hold about yourself, about others, about the world, and just question it. Ask yourself, is this really true? Why do I believe this?
Just that small act of questioning.
It's a start. It cultivates that self-awareness, that critical thinking Lee valued so much.
So maybe the question for you to think about is, as you navigate your own path, your own process, what kind of artist of life do you want to be?
And what assumptions, what rigid ideas might you need to learn to flow around like water?